The term vampire became popular in Western Europe during the 18th century when a mass hysteria resulted in many people being accused of vampirism. However, the history of vampires goes way back, and most cultures around the world have ancient stories related to different entities that would feast on the blood of their victims. All around the world, stories can be found that detail encounters with vampires. Although today these stories are considered to be fiction, many people still believe that vampires still exist. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at these 5 mysterious vampire cases. Highgate Vampire. During the late 1960s, stories about alleged vampire sightings started appearing in various newspapers around London. All the stories revolved around the Highgate Cemetery located in North London, and one of the most prominent stories was published in the London Evening News on the 2nd of November 1968. The newspaper reported that on the night of Halloween, unknown men resorted to digging up graves around the London area. In a strange ritual, the men gathered flowers from different graves and arranged them in such a way that they formed multiple arrows pointing to one of the new graves. They had uncovered a grave, collected the coffin from inside and opened it. The strangest act was that the men then drove an iron stake into the breast of the corpse. The police could not identify the individuals or their motivation behind this terrible act. However, most of the people linked to the alleged vampire sightings that were being reported near the graveyard. Later in 1969, a man named David Farrant wrote a letter to a newspaper in which he claimed that while passing the cemetery, he saw a grey figure that seemed to be supernatural in nature. He had also asked other people if they had seen anything similar in the cemetery. Several people replied and claimed to have seen ghosts and other supernatural phenomenon inside the cemetery. Some of the descriptions of the ghosts included that of a tall man wearing a hat, a woman wearing white clothes, a spectral cyclist, and a mysterious face watching through the bars of the Highgate Cemetery. Some people also reported hearing voices calling their names and footsteps behind them while they were walking home. Due to the continuous media coverage of alleged vampire and ghost sightings in Highgate Cemetery, unrest started to spread across London that eventually resulted in a mob of hunters swarming the cemetery on Friday the 13th in 1970. The police locked the cemetery, but the mob climbed the gates and the walls of the cemetery in order to find out the truth about the ghosts and vampires. The event was broadcast live on television, but the mob could not find any evidence of vampires or ghosts in the cemetery. It's believed that the Highgate Vampire stories originated as a result of a feud between 2 self-proclaimed exorcists and paranormal researchers. To this day, many people believe that the Highgate Cemetery is still haunted, and since the 1970s, many people have claimed to have seen ghosts and vampires inside the cemetery. Savas Ivanovitch. Many people in Serbia believe that a real-life vampire named Savas Ivanovitch lived in a small village in Serbia. Over time, it has become one of the most famous folklores in Serbia. According to legend, Savas Ivanovitch was the first Serbian vampire, and he lived in an old watermill situated close to a river. It's reported that during his life, he took the lives of many who worked at the nearby mill. The story goes that the hill was purchased by the Jagodic family, and it was operational until the 1950s. During recent years, the local administration had taken control of the watermill, and today it serves as a tourist attraction. Interestingly enough, there have not been any recent encounters with the entity, which has caused many to suggest that the creature has either moved on or has passed away. Others have said they've seen the creature close to the mill on dark nights, and that the mysterious entity has tried to lure some of the local people in. In fact, back in 2012, different media outlets reported that the vampire was back in the area after a bunch of locals reported seeing the creature. The Upir Vampire, Russia. Upir is considered to be one of the most vicious vampire species in Russian folklore. It's believed that this vampire is incredibly bloodthirsty and won't stop until it's got its fix. This creature is said to enjoy the hunt and will even play with its victims. According to the stories, this creature is said to have iron-strong teeth, a pale face, and give off a distinctive smell. Interestingly enough, It's reported by eyewitnesses that the sunlight does not affect this entity and that it actually uses this to its advantage. This creature is said to hunt during the daytime from noon until midnight. Different regions in Russia and the Ukraine seem to have different legends about vampires, and even detail ways in which you can kill them. The best way of taking down one of these creatures is tying a thread to one of the creature's buttons. After this, you will then be able to follow it back to its den and drench it in holy water. Once this has been done, a stake to the heart will finish off the creature. Although these stories sound outlandish, locals in the region take them very seriously and are always on the lookout for these creatures. The Vampires of Crooklyn, Grange. Though originally believed to have been nothing more than a published fictitious short story, there are many now living in the area of Cumberland, England, that believe that the story's telling of the Vampires of Crooklyn, Grange to have been a real-world account of an actual witness encounter. According to the legend, a woman and her two brothers visited the town of Cumberland and rented an older house away from other neighbours for a small fee. Though the house was not ideal in its design, with many claiming it to have been abandoned for quite some time, the three family members stayed there for quite a while and became accustomed to the location. It was not until the summer months that the family began to realise that something far more sinister was lurking in the area around the house. According to the legend, as the woman was sleeping, a strange creature entered the house through the window and bit onto the neck of the woman. The creature was described as having a brown face and eyes that glowed like tiny flames. Shortly after biting the woman on the neck, she awoke and began to scream for help as she jerked away from the creature attacking her. This led to her brothers quickly entering the room with a gun, believing that an intruder had entered. Unfortunately, the monster had already jumped out of the window when the sister began to scream, and so the brothers quickly followed it as it ran through the nearby forest and towards a local cemetery. As the creature ran in the distance, one of the brothers shot towards the creature and believed to have hit it in the leg before it scurried into the cemetery. As the brothers stood outside the cemetery, they had believed that perhaps the creature had been a vampire and so decided to wait until the morning before entering the cemetery and battling the creature. That morning, they entered the crypts and discovered a body with a fresh wound in its leg that appeared similar to the gunshot wound inflicted by one of the brothers, and so burned the body. Though many still regard the legend as being proof of a vampiric entity, many others believe that perhaps the creature had been that of a ghoul. A ghoul is known to reside around cemeteries as they can take the form of any person that they devour. Additionally, ghouls are described as having burning eyes of fire similar to that of the jinn. Could very well be that the creature was in the process of turning into the woman but was stopped in time by their brothers taking action. The Vampires of New England. During the 19th century, Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island and other parts of New England saw a deadly outbreak of tuberculosis. At the time, the locals did not understand the disease and they thought of it as the deceased consuming the lives of their surviving relatives. This led to many unfortunate incidents. People resorted to burning the bodies of their relatives in order to save themselves from the vampires. This misunderstood tuberculosis outbreak and the subsequent events related to it are referred to as the New England Vampire Panic. Among the many unfortunate cases, the case of Mercy Brown became quite famous and was widely reported by the local newspapers. A girl named Mercy Brown used to live with her family in Rhode Island. Her mother contracted tuberculosis and it soon spread to other family members, including her sister and brother. The neighbours became worried and started to accuse Mercy's family of being vampires. A few months after this, Mercy Brown passed away. Her father, George Brown, was not happy with the neighbours saying that his family members were vampires. However, a few days after the burial of Mercy Brown, the villagers found that her body had turned in the grave. It had shown little decomposition and there was still fresh blood in her heart. This convinced the locals that Mercy Brown was a vampire and she was spreading the deadly disease around the village. Reluctantly, George Brown permitted the villagers to exhume her body. The villagers then burnt her heart, mixed it with water and gave it to Mercy's brother to drink as a cure. As you would expect, the cure was not successful and he also died. This is a perfect example of how misunderstanding a disease can lead to people believing in vampires. But what do you think of these 5 real-life vampire cases? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.